and 1. So side government has to prove exclusivity as to why this is a good policy to have, because their case is not cognizant of things not being as bad as they think it is, and the other alternatives existing that can reach the same impact that they want. They need to prove why veto power exclusively is the best way of attaining better policy. I think they have failed so far at achieving that. A lot of responses towards opening government. 1. The core assumption that Prime Minister and DPM make is that scientists need to be the representatives in power, they can't just be advisors. The first response I have is I still don't understand why they need the veto power, because that's the exclusive thing they need to defend, right? Panels of experts already exist in status quo. Policies currently already do have the same rigor of questioning from scientists through the advisory panels that they have. The first 3 minutes of PM setup are not exclusive. But what I want to push back against them and closing government is the question of the veto power. Because anything outside of complete 100% saving the environment is likely to be vetoed against. Even stuff tangibly related to the environment can now be said no against. Like, I hope this is clear in your head, panel. Something like nationalizing an industry like agriculture, giving farmers new equipment, giving them arable land, giving them new seeds, whatever they do, right? That is a perfectly reasonable thing for scientists to just downright veto at the point in which they deem agriculture practices in less developed areas to be a significant harm to the environment. This is bad because the role of the state is to help people. You inhibit that from happening because of technocracy. It's not just bad, it's literally undemocratic. 2. Government talks about politicians who want to get re-elected. We think on our side that the desire for politicians to form dynasties and remain in power longer is an incentive structure that encourages their projects to come to fruition, allowing them to appease and cater to their voter base. This in and of itself shows that both scientists and politicians have an incentive to do it well on our side. This debate is about why no one should have veto power, especially scientists. This undermines democratic processes and systems which are there for accountability. Thirdly, OG prioritizes this idea of like non-bias on scientists, right? I'll say more about this in my extension, but to tease, the position of objectivity that scientists have right now exists because they are experts and advisors. They are not the ones who have to make the decision. When they are the ones who have to make the decision, they are subject to public scrutiny. When that happens, scientists are inherently just a lot more likely to be disproportionately pressured to make the wrong decision, the subjective decision. More on that in a bit. Before the extension, go CG. Yeah.
Yeah, so can you explain me how exactly does a politician have an incentive to, make a decision that does not harm the environment in long term over here for over the short term gains?
Yeah, so like the incentive of politicians is to stay in power, right? So that probably means not doing a bad job at whatever it is they want. So if they want to do an environmentally friendly policy, they have every incentive to make sure that they do it well because that's their job. Extension. Why smarter and more environmentally friendly policies are likely to become sparse. Why you get less progressive change. This is a flip to OG's strongest argument of helping states make better policies. The first mechanism is on trade-offs and why they are just likely to always predominantly favor the scientists. Scientists have a lot of confirmation bias, and that's fine, right? They are literally trained for years upon years to develop that skill set to be objective. What this means is that they're just significantly more likely to hyperfixate on the things they know and that they have studied and be very dismissive about things that they don't really care about. Note what it does is that it skews the lens of how policies are made, because now the shift towards policy making, at least in the realm of the environment, is so heavily skewed towards catering to the needs and wants of these specific scientists in the panel. Why is this such a big problem? Why is this such a big harm? 1. You get a significant reduction in economic growth and development on side government. This is true because the more you want to bolster and prop up industries, it necessarily requires you to commit severe amounts of carbon emissions. It obviously requires you to use a lot of land and other natural resources. This is comparatively worse because these trade-offs are important for people to use and uplift themselves, especially in developing countries. And obviously, it's not what scientists are going to care about because they have a vested interest in caring about the environment first and people later. The second massive impact is in is that the policy you are likely to get is heavily mitigatory and likely to not actually contribute that much to the development of your country. This is true because it only takes one scientist or one group of scientists to say no, and everything starts back from zero. The point is, the change that happens on their side of the house, at best, is something really marginal. It won't help develop people nor save the environment. So to be clear, right, the coastal community that PM talks about probably never gets the help they need because the marine biologist in the panel probably has a lot of qualms with messing with the ecosystem that these people live in. The second mechanism is on making decisions about policies and inherent deadlock. There is a reason why currently in status quo, veto power is reserved quite exclusively for only select individuals, at most the president. The reason this is normal and fine for that is because they're expected to represent the entire summation of public opinion. Yeah, it's kind of like a bit suspicious, but our current social contract with the state is okay with it because the president represents us. The problem with giving scientists the power is that any respected scientist also has a lot of subjective nuance and particular opinion in the context of any environmental topic. This coincides with PM MEC of the panel of scientists who probably have expertise in different topics. That is to say, there is a massive chance of analysis paralysis at the point in which a lot of discussion has to be made per policy. Note, I'm not saying talking and consulting with experts is bad. What I am saying is that there's a limit to it in status quo, which doesn't exist on op, because you need to come up with a total yes, which otherwise will turn into a complete no. That's how the veto works. The last mechanism is really important. You politicize science. You politicize science because now scientists can't just do what they're good at. Now they also have to take in and become a fucking politician. MG will probably say, wait, isn't that good? What's the harm there? The harm there is that scientists are not politicians. They are scientists. All these panels of experts will inherently be pressured and will be criticized by whatever decision they make because now they have the entire nation critiquing their every thought and every choice. This heavily puts into consideration the non-biased view that opening government seems to think scientists have. Because even if they were right, and the discussion was all about facts, that doesn't take into consideration the amount of public scrutiny that they will get. This inherently makes their role as panel experts a lot more taken into question. For all of those reasons, I think opening opposition has given a lot of massive impacts that take you to say that they should probably win. All of those reasons, of course.